We're live.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, man, I think where we were just talking before behind going, pre-going live. I think it's a really good sort of place to start, man. Just to sort of give a bit of context, we were talking about how in this world you can be the loneliest human being in the middle of a city, but you can be kind of feeling, in a kind of circle of friends in the middle of the most isolated countryside place. And I wanted to relate to this too because it was obviously since we last spoken, you were just anyone maybe watched our last conversation, you were just on the brink of leaving the north to go down to the big smoke, man. So I think it's like you can relate too much. But anyway, before we go any further, how are you doing tonight, brother?
Yes, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Yes, it's like, and on the way to that journey of, I'm still looking to end up in sort of the Camberwell, Stockwell sort of area, but some personal issues. Life directs you as opposed to the other way around, and so I have to deal with some things here in Suffolk for the meanwhile. So rather than going straight to, I guess, a big city, I'm in my home small town of Sudbury, Suffolk, surrounded by it's an farming town, and surrounded by fields and meadows, and it's quite sort of pastoral.
And as I say, I'm fascinated by this, and I think it's something you can speak upon, man, and I can definitely speak upon. But it's, and I wanted to relate to you really because I'm, being a creative sort of person that you are. This whole dichotomy or duality about, like I said, you can live in the middle of a city, be surrounded by a million people maybe, and you can feel very isolated. And hey, city life can generate a lot of creativity. I'm not seeing both sides, man, because I've lived in cities and I've been really creative. But there's a duality of that compared to, like I say, being creative and outside, away from people, which you find in a lot many musicians, writers. They want to go out and live in the middle of nowhere and just. I mean, George Orwell is a perfect example. He spent literally his last few years writing books on a little island, just 5 or 6 miles from where I am right now, and I can understand that sort of thing. So you personally, when you're do you kind of like go with the flow and think, okay, if I'm living in the city, I've got to get my head around that, and when I'm in the countryside, living around that, and of the two, which do you prefer? So if you were in a city, would you like, actually I prefer to be out in the country, or were you like right now you're just itching to get back into the big smoke and people?
I think when I was younger, I mean, I grew up in this place, and I think wherever anyone grows up, there's a kind of reactionary quality to that, whether it's either to sort of cling on or to refuse it. So there was sort of that sort of adolescent / early 20s sort of sense of wanting something completely different to where I came from, and it's only after those years have I come back to appreciate the sort of this area for what it truly is. It's sort of like, which is, I guess, understandable. As a kid, you sort of like other things, take precedent. But so I wanted to move to a bigger place. I mean, I've always liked people very much, and humanity, and that's sort of what inspires me as much as anything, like people and characters and sort of characteristics and behaviors. So the idea of being around a place with a denser population of all types of people, and the kind of intensity that creates all kinds of lives, and so on a kind of, I guess, sourcing level, there's more to discover with less effort for me in the city, like, because I can just drop out into it, and you can just feel and see, and all these, the flow of people just is around you. Of course, there are people that live very interesting lives out in more secluded areas, but of course it's for me to be inspired by them, I would have to go and visit them and move around lots. And of course I've got other things to balance in my life as well. So now that I'm older, there's no preference for me in terms of what's better than the other. It's like there's no as we discussed a bit before this call as well. It's like there's benefits in various areas, and it's just I guess it's just what you need for your life at the time. And at the minute, I guess, well, actually right now, so as I say, I'm sort of dealing with some personal issues here. To be back in a kind of slightly less noisy place is very useful. But when I'm in a perhaps a sort of steadier frame of mind, it's like I like the bullishness of sort of a bit of sort of ferocity of sort of where people and events might take you, which in a city can be sort of quite quick and quite sort of surprising.
Yeah, I think you very eruditely put it there, my friend. And I think that the key you sort of said there is it's kind of like almost like we're like insects. We kind of like retreat to our little places, and we, like you say. And I'm the same. Whenever I go into humanity of any kind, I'm always open sensitive. I don't go in consciously looking for things. It's very that's another discussion about how your mindset should be when you're confronting people, not to be putting your own projections across or trying to so you go with that state of mind. But like you say, when you're in that environment, you'd always just mining resources, mining things, picking up. And it's something that again, and I'll point people towards it. I'll maybe put a link in after, when we finish. But it was like something you kind of touched upon with something like the project you did, like Martin's Lug. The idea of just picking up just day-to-day sounds and things that, it was one of the things, ironically, I remember being taught when I was at Breton, one of the lectures I was given him by the photography teacher there, the lecturer there, and he said to me, like, he said, we should all be doing? We should all be going around photographing everyday objects in the street furniture, phone boxes. He said, and people were like, well, what do you mean? He said, because that's all disappears because we live in this world of constant change. And it's exactly like you're saying.
Yes.
The creative mind will see that and will go, okay, there's this guy called Martin. I'm going to record his day. Someone who's not creative doesn't think that. And like that taps into what you're saying about diving into humanity and using it to sort of, subconsciously then turn it into a piece of artwork or creativity.
Well, yeah, I'm very happy with that piece. I must give credit to obviously the sort of lineage of sort of what I'm adding to in a very small way. There's this absolutely not prolific, the wrong word. Phenomenal. He's what sort of pioneering, maybe. I mean, he's said, yeah. I mean, pioneering. A guy called Chris Watson, who's an incredible sort of sound capture artist who's worked with David Attenborough quite a lot, and he lives up in Gosforth in Newcastle, and does all these kind of sound projects. Like, I think he was going to do a trans Mongolian sounds across that trek right out to Japan or something like that. And like pick up sounds of that journey. So to create a journey like that, one of the things I heard that he made was the sound of a river. So he followed the river in sound. So he captured bits of the river as it traveled along, and you experienced it just through the audio. So from that inspiration, I thought, because I was spending time down at the People's Kitchen, and yeah, this guy called Martin, who's a good friend, yeah, and this machine, and it was just sort of like, you've been around it for quite a while, and you sort of, and it was this sort of thing that was both annoying but otherwise, and you're just like, right, it's a sound, it makes, and this is the sound of our days here and his day there. So I thought it's quite nice. People have a picture of sort of, when you say sort of, People's Kitchen or Soup Kitchen, they have maybe an image of what that is, but it's engaging a different sense. And, so it's sort of like the sound of a place. So I would like to do maybe for future projects, sounds that are relatable to specific activity, like maybe a charity activity, maybe, different institutions, organizations, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a fascinating something you're tapping onto, and like you say, when none of us are reinventing the wheel, we're just picking up on ideas. Like, we're all life's a remix, as they say. But in that essence, I mean, one of the things, the fascinating. I think this is one of the convergence I particularly done, some of the rabbit holes I go down, what the areas I'm in. But I think we're entering an age, particularly now, where the barriers we spoke about this before are all breaking down. And one of the things that I think is going to start to emerge from this is going to be this hunger that you see. I see particularly around in humanity at the moment, where they want direct information. They want recordings of real life. They want people to go, okay, look, this, instead of a news reporter or media going searching for whatever their narrative may be, I want some essence of what people are. It's a very close friend of mine's doing a project, and he's had this idea for a while called wiki being, which is like the idea we put our details, all our life stories, all our things into a platform, and this can just become like a commonwealth of knowledge for everybody to tap into. And I think what you're speaking into, it conflates with this, because like I said, it's a bit, taps back to what that photography lecturer said to me. We're such in this urge just to march forward and not stop and record things. Yeah. And it's going to be all these things that are going to be important. Like right now, how much archive do we search back for what happened in the 19, like literally 100 years ago for the Passchendaele? We go back through everything. And I think what's interesting is going to be the convergence between the things that you're doing and like that whole thing, and then be able to put that onto a bigger, as the internet expands and all the things are going to break down, that being able to be spread up everywhere and being kept forever, it does actually become a very a document of time and history. It becomes almost like a time machine. Because this goes into a very kind of left field thought, but I thought maybe in the future generations they're going to take all this information and build time machines out of it, and they're going to go, okay, this is what the sounds were like, this is what and all the information,
build the whole world out of like the
exactly, my friend.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and actually thinking along the sort of where do we go first? Yeah, no, it's like so yes. So I've certainly become more and more attracted to transitory art forms. So graffiti being one of the major ones. I remember growing up and thinking, like, I don't know, just because you'd spent so long on something, you put so much work into something, you'd want the idea of, once you'd finished it to hang around. It's like whatever it was, you'd think, right, and because it's personal, and you kind of, it's something you've spent so long there. But now, even like transitory sort of things that sort of are going to get destroyed within moments can both be the like single moment that is then lost, but someone takes a photograph that or videos that's a permanent moment that then exists as well as the physical item that's gone. So you've got this both happening at once. You mentioned documents from previous ages, and again back to the lecture you're talking about it at uni, and it's sort of items that we perhaps might think are maybe might not be significant or unusual on the face of it, like in our time and right now, have great effect maybe later on. Like I love looking through old photographs they've got in the Newcastle Library of ones around the sort of 1960s, and sort of the old streets and sort of the collection of all those. And these are quite sort of if you took that photo today, you'd think, oh, it's an average shot of that, but the resonance it has to the me looking back of that photograph is very different, because you can sort of imagine all the changes and sort of like the storylines that sort of go into that, and it gives you sort of other information that it sort of assumes that it will gather information as it travels forward. And one last thing, I was just thinking in terms of sort of, you say, living in the future and sort of like the idea of time and things like that. And I was thinking of, because we were talking about books briefly before now, and how different mediums sort of work at different times, in that often things that are written down, there'll be a certain bunch of people that maybe read more, or that's their sort of medium for collecting information, so they'll get the information then. But then there are some people that wait for the TV show or the film, and that obviously happens later down the line. So there are some people that we're kind of constantly running with, some people that are living a little bit further ahead and a little bit behind. And likewise, geographically as well, some, music advances in a certain country, but takes a couple of years or, to get around to another one. So, it's just interesting how time plays with that as well.
No, I think it's fascinating what you speak about. I think just to sort of take it back a step. I mean, that whole point about like you say, the essence of transitory. It's one of the things that always fascinate me about particularly Buddhist art. I mean, there's some fascinating. And again, people can do your own research, and you can see people like but these Buddhist monks will make, you know, absolutely intricate whole chakras and drawings and maps and all this out of sand, and they will just open the lid up and it's gone.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's like that is the very nature of life itself, which is I tell you, you're actually right, because ultimately there's some point of it. I mean, none of this is permanent. The only thing we can possibly hope as human beings to leave is some sort of legacy. I mean, that's
well, yes, and even that I think is to be not thought of in the some people think of that legacy thing, I think, in a much more sort of arrogant way, but I know the way you're talking about, in that sort of leave behind the positive ideas for other people to take, you know, sort of like not necessarily to slap your name on it or whatever, but simply, you know, these things move forward. I was thinking, so that's wonderful. There's a guy who does a dog in Newcastle High Street who makes it out of sand, and again, that's gone by whatever time in the afternoon. And also, so going back to the city idea as well, it's that what's the word, working with the present moment, and that's why there's no disappointment for those people that work on those designs, is because every moment is enjoyed on the way of making that thing that they make. So the process is entirely part of the work and the enjoyment and the experience, and no part of that is less important or more important. So by the time you get to the end and it blows away, that single moment of it going, there we go, that's just another moment, and then we're on to the next thing. And I know this is right. This is a wonderful discovery that was made, and like, I think the more people that can really get on board with that, I think it will help artwork and process, and it gets you completely out of all those trappings of sort of all those distractions, I guess. Yeah, it's sort of that sort of stop you working properly. Yeah.
No, and I think that, just, you know, before we sort of stray too far away from that whole artist and city thing, what I think is really fascinating, and I think it sort of ties into what we've been talking about generally, is that it's kind of like a universal pattern you get around, not just in our culture, in many cultures, but you'll have like a city, there'll be a rundown area that will, you know, become like it is, and then that will, you know, what you're having is you have the creative person in there. The creative person will be there because he hasn't got any money, he's got no resources, and go, oh, okay, it's cheap and rent, and let alone all the things that, like we've just spoken about, the creative like about it. You know, we like that whole. There's something very attractive about, you know, old buildings falling down, dereliction, that breakdown of everything. There's a beauty to it that artists, and, you know, particularly, and creative people find. But like I say, in that process, you'll get those people will move in. They will get this. They will get those places, make into a, you know, galleries and studios, attracts more people in. Then you go through this slow, you know, process of gentrification, and it all gets ripped up, and it's like it's all changed, and it becomes that's the nature of things. And I mean, there's a perfect example. I mean, it's one of the. I used to go around Leeds and just paint old buildings that used to, you know, fall apart, and then, you know, and now they're just gone. And it's always, to me, it's one of the things I love about living, particularly in Great Britain, particularly, is when you see a lot of you never have to go too far. Even the most modern city, and you'll see buildings from like 1700s, and you think, wow, like you said, every brick of that. And I think this ties into the whole point of where I was saying that the convergence of maybe where technology is going to go, is that, put it this way, my beloved brother was for a long time was a brickie, and he was always had this great satisfaction when you used to talk to him, and he was saying, do you know what it is? You know, he says, I don't get paid what other people are going to get paid. You know what I mean? But I can do what I like. I have some really crappy conditions. He's been a builder in the 80s, so you can imagine. But he said every time I drive past that building or that house, I know that's my legacy. And that's what I meant about that legacy. It's like, I put my little bit of work in. No one's going to I'm not going to get any big trumpets. I'm not going to get any things in the paper.
No, but
and this is the whole thing about that convergence. I think we're going to get into a world where, why shouldn't we all be just be known for things? You know what I mean? Why should just be projects just be looked like you said, every little integral part of every cog of every wheel is integral and necessary for every other part, and it shouldn't just be looked over. And I think we've only looked over it because the people we live in this world where it's like, well, we look at the end product, we don't actually look at the process.
Well,
that's
sure,
why
yeah, and I think it's yeah, well, it's the what's the word? It's the models, isn't it? So it's the reason we look at end products is because things have been structured in a way where what someone earns and what someone gets is decided on the end product. So it's, you know, it's this it's capitalism. So and again, thinking about the opposite, or not opposite, but like an alternative view, when your brother was sort of like looking at the building and saying, I worked towards that. It's the process which is being, so he's being compensated for the process, but the reward is in endless directions. You know, it's sort of this idea that and connectivity, going right back to sort of like something off where we talked off there, this idea that you are there is something truly connecting there. You know, it's sort of the skills, the ideas, the preference, the artistry, the sort of perspective. I think this should be this way, you think this way, but you know, what can we agree on? You know, all it's brings communication together, and you know, so there's lots of positives. So, and this is the thing. So, the legacy is as much the work as what the work ended up being, you know, as well.
Exactly, my friend. I think this is on a general one, and I think it's one of the things that, you know, particularly, I mean, I've been reflecting recently because I had grandparents who went through passenger jail, and I was just thinking the amount of progress we've made in 100 years, and you know, and I think it's always important at times to remember that, you know, that we are progressing, the poverty is going down, we are getting to this point, and what I say about, and I think this is, you know, I think we'll only go more and more in the future, is the idea of we've always got to battle for the individual. And that's what I don't like about this whole idea of like you were talking about. We should, you know, every component part is all about the individual. We're all, and that's why I love this diversity. I love the idea we can all have, like you said, we can have different ideas about in small sentences and words, but that's great. Let's not get, and that's what I love about the way we've gone. And I'm particularly like in relation to 100 years ago, you think, well, we're on the battlefields of just a few miles from where we are right now, and you think, you know, that can never be allowed to happen again. That was allowed to happen because we all became not individuals. And I think
absolutely, it's like because God knows what the inner feelings of those people must, you know, and the sort of denial you have to put yourself through to you know, kill another person or whatever. It's sort of like, it's so contradictory to the, you know, innate nature, you know. Yeah, it's and as you say, it's people became unthinking, perhaps maybe the wrong word, but there was certainly manipulation of masses, and yeah, and I mean that's always dangerous, and maybe, I mean, yeah, I agree, the sort of empowerment of sort of individual, to look after the individual is important, and also to educate self, self-critical thought, and self-assessment in light of looking after everyone else. So it's that kind of balance, isn't it? It's that sort of to look inward and sort of be engaged as possible, to yourself and then to everyone else. It's when you disengage, you turn off, I guess, you know, which we all, in many ways, I mean, it's obviously people get tired from time to time, you know, this is a daily, this happens, you know, and when we're tired, sometimes it's harder to you know, engage and be as focused, you know, so it's never something maybe that will, well, I mean, the body has natural limitations, but there are certainly things we can do to help it be as best as possible.
Exactly, my friend. And I think this plays into, I think, the whole thing we're talking about, because and again, just, you know, going back to what you said about the idea of battlefields and stuff, but Uh, a lot of that doesn't happen because you've got communications, and this is what always, I think it's always in my mind, because I mean, dude, being a creative person, you can go some apocalyptic doomsday, you know, and you think, oh, exactly, dude, yeah, I love swimming in the murky waters, my friend, and it's a great thing, but you've always got to remember, that's what I'm saying, the communication, a human being to express to a human being. And that's why even this age now where people are going, oh, well, look, and it is true, everyone's just escaping to echo chambers, you've got everyone, but I'd rather we live in a world where we're screaming at each other than we're not. And I think all the time we're communicating, I think in some ways we're like kids in the playground, but you know, we'll get through that, man. And all the time we're talking, it's a good thing, because this is the thing. You're right. I think you're saying, and I think this is the convergence of where I think technology has definitely brought us to even more than was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever you want to talk about. But we know far more about each other now, which makes us more compassionate. This is where we're generally going down this pathway of just understanding humanity. I mean, I thought about this the other day. I'm like, okay, go back X amount of time, would people be that really worried about people and their mental health issues like we are right now? Well, okay, we're far away from a utopia, but
of course,
50 years ago, it was just bung them in a cold room and let them rot, you know?
yes.
So I think these communicate, and I think this is the whole point. Communication is the key, and we can only be communication. This is what you're speaking of, is we're allowed to just be ourselves, and that's why the two are so intrinsically linked, that you can think for yourself, you can say for yourself, you can be yourself, and with that we can all march forward as a species and open up to each other. It's when we don't and we suppress because we're afraid of what people around us. And I think we're in a far healthier point of where we are just generally as humanity, as a species, than we ever have been in previous times.
Absolutely. And of course, with the day-to-day sort of noise from various outlets, of course, highlighting the issues that we're working on, which of course there are lots of things that we are far from. It's important to balance that energy, I think, on a personal level, just for self-care as much as anything else. But it is also of a truth that things are better than, you know, we are at the best point in history. We've only been more rubbish to one another previously, you know, so it's like, okay, we haven't got out of, you know, we haven't, you know, got to the great place, but like, so and as you also say, the access to various communication is a big part of that. I had this sort of, I don't know quite where my brain went, but I went like mid-20s, I was thinking sort of the point of education, because I was going through this whole, you know, sort of nihilist sort of idea of sort of just like, what's the point if we're all going in circles and it's all just passing this stuff around, and sort of what's the ultimate positivity? And I think for me, like the purpose and the what I love about education more than anything else is it creates peace, and that's both inner peace and sort of peace between people. If you know as much as possible, and you learn many different things, and you can use those things to in all kinds of combinations within yourself to try and handle, you know, life inevitably throws up hard things, and you can use that information to handle that empowerment. Means you will treat yourself better and will treat other people better, and then of course the extra positives that cycle out from that. And again, so that education, both for individually but then communicated, creates this en masse, you know, sort of like helps people to help themselves and help one another. So it's sort of I mean, this and that sort of pulled me out of that way of thinking and those kind of, you know, sort of, I don't know, you know, you go through thought experiments, you know, and that was sort of, but now I'm firmly in this sort of, a very positive sort of place about, sharing and all the rest of it. But I guess it's just, it's just, I'm just thinking now about the Orwellian sort of side of things, which you mentioned the other model, like the of uploading data, sort of, you know, which is a kind of labor of sorts. It's just to describe the act, it is a kind of free labor, which we all do. Facebook, all this, you know, sort of nonsense. I guess the problem is that there will be powers and people at the minute that want to use that in a suppressive or authoritarian way, which is obviously what you're working against, you know, which is, so it's something to be wary of, I guess, as we move forward.
Oh, completely wary of, my friend. And I think this is it's going to have to be one of the great, I think, when we boil all this down, we're going to have to sit down as people, and whatever country we all live in, and whatever bit of turf we all live in, and work out that very question. Because this is what I'm saying. I mean, even today, my friend, I mean, we've got UK government flying over to San Francisco trying to tell all tech companies to say, well, not only can is it bad enough that you're now, I mean, I think it's bad enough that what Twitter and Facebook are doing anyway. I think it's terrible that they're going in and cutting people verifications if you don't fall on a certain side of that. Like you just said, I think we're all going to have a free speech because we need platforms where we can all talk to each other.
Yeah.
But now that's what I'm saying. We had this very day, Amber Rudd going over there and telling them all, well, you've got to stop people and you've got to filter out before it even goes on your platform. And I'm like, no. Because it reminds me, man, it goes back to the whole thing about you said about books, and the whole thing, the reason we got to this point is because back, a few hundred years ago, someone did the Gutenberg press, and that gave the ability for people to disinformate information without any middleman. And it's like we're going backwards, and this is why I say I think it's really crucial, my friend. And I think it goes back to what I was saying to you about the book I've just been reading about the art of the war of resistance. Is that we've got so many things against us. If we just allow these, while we've got right now these tools, because I think you're right, we've got the tools. I thought about it the other day. Look, George Orwell's in there, it's just on a few miles away, and he had a typewriter, and he could maybe sort of, send it down to London, and it's all printed. Now we've got tools in our hands that he would have dreamed of. But how long that window of opportunity is going to be there for? Because I think we are entering the great new world, and dude, these people aren't going to give up control. And but equally, that's what I'm saying. It's a duality, because we've got the greatest tools in our hands, the greatest bit never before, man. And I can tell this, even doing what I've been doing for 3 years, it's like it's exponentially gone along. What I dreamed about 3 years is actually possible, and you think, man, this is unbelievable, and it's becoming easier and easier, and eventually this is going to happen. But it's like everything else. These things only ever happen if there's people of people, not people in the power, who are using the tools, making use of it, spreading it around, and doing it. Because that's the only way things are ever going to change. And I think that's one of the great dialectics of how we've been, if you look at history, I think we've always been fooled by this whole idea of, while they're distracting us, this is on a general one, we're all sitting doing this and that and the other, and then we all die and think, well, wait a minute, what was all that dance we all played for 50 years of my life? And we didn't take the power back. And when we did, we became, vulnerable to people and leaders and stuff. But now, as I said before, we've got these tools, and it's going to be interesting. That's why I say it's going to be fascinating, the times we live in, of what we do. Whether we're going to look back in 20 years' time and, future generations are going to go back, oh, well, what did you do with it all? You just sat back and watched your Xbox and just, I mean, I think as much as it's, the joy of all the times right now, I think there's that whole push behind us. I think you alluded to, dude. We've got this conversation right now because there's been bodies piled up on battlefields, and people have done a lot of striving and a lot of hard work, and people have written books, and every area you want to look at, whether it's gay rights, whether it's racial rights, whether it's women's rights, people have done a lot of hard work to get us to this point. And I think, what I mean, they would have looked at what we've got now and think, wow. And then I think on the other hand, they would have looked at us and gone, and you're complaining about memes and Pepes, and what's your problem, people? Wake up and use what you've got around you.
I guess it's learned behaviors, and sort of fight or brushing off distracting sort of commodities, because I mean, in society you have people that sort of I guess the soldiers of these causes, and sort of like it's sort of they are in touch with their values and their skills and their beliefs, and again it's that engagement. So they're engaged, so they go out and they push for other people to have that, the things that they believe will help everyone. And yeah, I mean, it's just, and also, but it's, and again, it talks to the lack of end result sort of situation again. It's always the present moment, because there will not be a situation where we live so long, get a load of stuff, and then, you know, we've got it, we've won the prize. You know, it's sort of like, it's just the prize is behaving constantly in a certain way. And that, so the life well, it's that life well lived sort of thing is the life, you know. So yeah, you often see this thing, don't you, like maybe people in their sort of 20s to 30s sort of maybe you know, have all the energy, and then so, this is a stereotype, but you know, like a person like that, and then things settle down, maybe 30, and then you know, the energy for the dreams, I guess, and the you know, the vitality for what they really want for everyone, sort of just goes out of their sort of vision, and it's yeah, and it's always a depressing thing to see. And the reason it's depressing is because you recognize that it's a kind of giving up, a kind of yeah, sort of less human sort of way of being. It's sort of becoming a body way of being, I guess, like a kind of a slumber. And we're all, you know, I'm guilty of this lots, and it's sort of like, I know, you know, it's finding whatever, you know, can work for you. And again, this is the sharing of tools and sharing of all these kind of things to try and keep you in the present place, because when you're in that place, you appreciate yourself more, you often achieve more by your own definitions of achievement, and that communication fights any kind of unhuman ambition by, you know, authoritarian systems or whatever, you know. It's sort of yeah. So yes, as you say, we've got these technologies, we should use them. We should defend against you know, controls. Yeah, there's been various sort of bills, haven't there, sort of like in terms of sort of, well, this was encryption, wasn't it? I think, was it Amber Rudd today? Was it the end-to-end encryption? You know, as if it's so childish. What is it, like bad guys use end-to-end encryption? You know, they literally talk in these kind of biblical sort of, you know, like terms, as if, you know, we haven't progressed through psychology and all the rest of it. There's no such thing as good guys and bad guys. Oh, it's so depressing. So depressing.
It's worse than that, man. It's honestly, I listened to it and I thought, it's like, listen to yourself. You're trying to ban mathematics.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't, you know, it's like, they don't even realize how dumb they are. Like, you can't, you know, man.
It's yes, yeah. let's yes. I
think on a general one, man, and I think this is I think the point of where, just, you know, where this is all going to go, and I think it relates to this point. And if you do any, I'm fascinated by old Irish history before, you know, our sort of say something, and there was a lot of this was all decentralized communities, and what was really fascinating was that the arts were really highly sought. Like, go back to Greece, and they were always highly sought of because they saw it as a, not so much as you maybe had a natural flair, which we've all got natural flares because of how we see that, but a lot of it was just the appreciation of the hard work. And that's what's missing in our world right now, because everything is just focused through these lenses of who they deem to, you know, almost like the old church scribes. We deem you acceptable, you're going to hell. And it's that kind of middleman stuff that I think is just going to break away. And what's going to come through that, and this is how I always think it, because I think ultimately, I think everybody, whatever side they want to do, everyone agrees they want art. Nobody wants to live in a world where there's no art, no music, and none of that. And even the most, whatever side of the, you know, your life of it. And all I think most people agree on was we just want some way of basically kind of just making sure that people are, like you said, all the things, and make sure they're fed, they're clothed, they're looked after. And equally, like, dude, if you spent a lot of time and hard work for it, like, yeah, damn right, you should be known for that, because that's not an easy process. This is one of the things that's, I think, it's been completely washed out in maybe our culture. Is just like everything's instant, and it's like, no, everything is like, even if you go back to building a brick, building a house,
yeah,
building a pencil. It's one of the things I said to people, like, Look at a pencil. How hard is that? You try making a pencil. You've got a source of wood. It's everything is so complicated. And we've got to. And what I'm trying to say is that we've all got these parts in this. We've all got part. We all. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of appreciation in general is something that's become more and more important to me. And it's sort of like. And I don't know whether I'm a product of my time or what, but maybe I was just a selfish person earlier on. It's like, as I've got older, I start to see the small acts and start to find appreciation in small moments and small sort of, just small acts of everyone. And I think that is certainly certain systems we live within which they're not appreciated, like like I guess in a kind of office world, I think, I don't know whether they're known as, there is a name for, like, for soft skills, I think they're called, like, the sort of the ideas of sort of like which is a horrible term for what we're dealing with here, but anyway, it's something that came to mind. But yes, so like the little bits of care and the sort of small moments of compassion that some people are so good at, and so keep things sort of moving. But of course, that can't be monetarized. That can't be. There's no way of qualifying, that kind of generosity or that kind of how to appreciate that. And that's the problem with where we're at, is because we've got so many things that are valuable that we have no way so the things that we can quantify in a very crude, basic terms take on a importance beyond their importance, and likewise the things that we can't do that with get lost in the cracks, even though without them, basically their value is far more than So it's this unevenness of trying to make a square for a round hole. So on a personal level, I just try to make sure that I focus my attention on those people and those underappreciated acts, because let's shine a light. I think that's important. And then, hopefully, through conversations with other people, you get, charity, I guess, is one argument of this, in that, we've got the crude sort of system of things aren't working some ways. So we put this kind of cog in the situation, which people donate to or whatever, and they kind of make it work. But of course, there's a harmonious solution, but that hasn't been found, or perhaps more likely needs persuasion hasn't occurred. It's
well, dude, I mean, that is literally another whole conversation, and I all I would say from that, and again from the insights I've had from the path I've been for the last 3 years, that these solutions are definitely, I not only say are coming, I think they're already there. It's just like I say, and that's what I'm saying at the moment. And again, I maybe just finish on this whole thing, because I don't want to go down too much of just talking about life in general. I want to talk to you about your music and your art, but just generally, I think we're at this tipping point right now, and I just think it's like, I suppose I say, it's what we do in this window of opportunity, and I think we are at this point, because I don't know, man. I'm not biblical in any way, but it's the old line. Maybe the meek will inherit the earth, because it's all the people. I've always said this. Man, one of the fortunes I had about living out in South America, and some time I spent in Africa and India and stuff, and I understood, and I completely get this. Man, what we deem as the third world, and we're, all the rest of it. I don't think that's even PC to say that anymore. But but what we deem as that part of the world, there's so much potential that's just, all it's done is because they've been born in the wrong part of the world, because they've been born in the wrong part of the...
It's a lottery of these terrible things that have these terrible wars and systems that have been put in place. It's it's disgraceful, and it's definitely our shame. There's a lot of shame in this direction.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. I don't, as much as it's shame, it's not really, because that's the whole point, that right now that it's people like me and you that are and generally, what I'm saying, but what I'm just generally, I think that I was want to think, not on an optimistic note, but just on a positive note on that. Once these tools become unclunky as they are right now, we fast forward 10 years time, Man, yeah, that's what I'm saying. All the things that we discuss right now are basically, they're gone. The idea that governments can print money and do whatever they like, those days are gone. There's already ledgers in place. The blockchain is already here.
Yeah.
That's already there to. It's just, you know, and I've seen the adoption in 2 or 3 years about, wow. And governments are all taking it on board because they're like, oh, we were going to be part. We can't miss out on something, and they just don't realize that they're doing it, and it's going to be the weapon. It's like red pilling them. It's going to be the thing that kills them because
yeah,
because this simple concept, my friend, of a public ledger, which is what the blockchain is, and it shows everywhere where the money's gone. That's going to be the biggest game changer for governments, because they can't get away with hiding and going, oh, we spend trillions on the military. Like, oh, wait a minute, we want to know where our punishment. And then we start to slowly take some of the power back. We go, wait, I pay my taxes. I want to know that my pound is going directly to the NHS or directly to this, or what I desire to choose towards, not towards military and towards things that we don't choose. And I think that's this is what I'm saying. These are there. It's just waiting for that to burst through. And
that transparency is going to be a beautiful thing. It's going to, it's and on that meek inheriting the earth thing, it's like just the reality is that no one is more important or otherwise. I mean, we are all built the same, and it's this sort of idea that whatever systems you can try to put in place, that truth will always be true, so it's everyone's experience is the world. It's like so whether they're heard or not, right now, it's the truth of them is still there, and it will become, as that gets evened out, and there's more people share, that will be the way it's reflected in the future. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. I hope so.
Well, man, just sort of take a complete sort of handbrake, hard left turn, dude. I mean, what's the plans for you? And I mean, at the moment, you like you said,
I'm working on. So I mean, it's similar to what we talked about last time, but I've actually sort of got deeper into the progress of it. So I am working on some new songs, and hopefully they'll be sort of ready down the far end of the year. But alongside that is the tarot card project. So I'm drawing new designs for tarot cards, as well as short pieces of music that sort of go alongside that. And again, whilst I'm here in Suffolk and I've got a bit of time, the idea is to work on them whilst I'm dealing with other bits and pieces as well. So I'm very, very lucky to have a place that I can do that in. And it's if I can get those two things out in a way that I'm happy with, by the end of the year, that'll be a good year. It's like so I'll keep you posted on the cards in particular, because I think it's quite a fun idea, like for many different people, like the idea of playing with shuffling different sounds and marrying sort of their ideas about narratives to those randomized sounds. I think I don't know, that's something I enjoy. Maybe someone else might enjoy it as well.
Well, yeah, completely, my friend. And again, it's like many things. I think particularly, I don't like to sort of talk about things too much. But yeah, I can't wait to talk to you maybe in sort of 3 or 4 months' time, when we both got we're a bit more advanced with both our platforms. And I think, like I say, it's going to be all I say, man. And I really do say this. I think, for those who want to, we mentioned earlier on, go out swimming into the choppy, murky waters, man. If you've got the bravery to do it, it's going to be strap yourself in, because we're in for one hell of a ride over the next few years. That's a guarantee. Whatever happens, I
will get my armbands on, and I hope I float. Yeah, it's like.
No, dude. I want, like I said, we spoke before we had this conversation. I want to finish this conversation off with Look Close. Now,
sure.
One of the reasons, and I told you before, it's been a very kind of a track that, and I'll give you a bit of an insight. I mean, one of maybe it's related to sort of computer programmers and coders, but they have this whole idea. They love to sort of work maybe long hours, particularly Americans. They work. He's like, literally, dude. They don't eat. They just drink tea, almost just, and they will play tunes. And I've seen it before. They will play one track over and over again.
Like a meditative sort of process.
Yes, my friend. It's completely zen. They just go loop it. Now, particularly it's that one. So that's why I chose this track I have. But equally as well, mate, and I'm very fascinated to know, especially in this world. Like, I've been putting some Chunder tracks out that have been the same idea about putting quite a lengthy track out. Now this is an 8-minute long song, which is why I love it, dude. So again, I want to know kind of really your thoughts behind the track, really, and particularly again, the length one. Was that something that you edited down? Was that just a natural process?
Yeah, that was yeah. So obviously there's quite a repetitive hook sort of throughout, and sort of like there was that sort of that kind of melody sort of came in first of all. This was made when I was back at uni, I think in my first year, with a good friend of mine called Simon Green, who is an excellent musician and has gone on to do various excellent things. But so it was an arrangement between me and him. He would live in the city, I would live in Bretton Hall, and I would make bits and pieces back there and then take kind of WAVs to him, and between us we'd come up with the format and the sort of the song. This was as much of a stream of consciousness I've made. In terms of lyrics. So yeah, I mean, that backing was on, and I used it as a kind of way of just expelling sort of thoughts on a particular thing. So yeah, and that's probably what made the length it is, in that, you know, you just let it all come out, and then you realize, oh, we're at 8 or 9 minutes or whatever. Yeah, it's like but hopefully, I mean, when I took it to Simon, we tried to sort of pull little bits out here and there to sort of color sections of it. So but ultimately it's a letter of sorts in a song. So it's using a song as a way of writing a letter.
So I guess this is where I tell you what I have learned. And I've gone and left it too fucking late again to articulate properly.
Okay, Tim, is it alright if I
say, well, I'm sorry, alright? I'm so fucking sorry. So I guess this is where I tell you what I have learned. This is where the film is finished, and the people is acknowledging the twist, and oh, it hurts. This is where we take a jazz cigarette to the lake, and I show you what happens when you lift up a star. Find tens, crawling. This is where I take your hand and cry 1,000 tears, that you'll understand that this is what I have learned. This is what I have learned. Fuck the blinding water, fuck the blinding water. If you go diving, well, all the best for you, but fuck this blinding water and all the ants crawling. Fuck this blinding water. I wrote this song as a warning. So I called 3 times for my candy man. The bus didn't show up. I should have turned around. You're not meant to see this, but I wait. And another arrives, delivers me to my destination. Through the gates and in the street light. Is that your window? Is that you watching? That was 2. I should turn around and go back. I wasn't meant to see this. And then I call one last time. Dancing in the club as I light another J. You dance a corpse up in the mist. And there you are, dancing the bones of unrest. But it's only in my head. It is only in my head. Look close. Look close. 'Cause the next time you'll see me, the next time you'll see me, I said, brother and sister, look close. My son and my daughter, look close. 'Cause the next time you'll see me, I said the next time you'll see me, the next time you'll see me, I'll be as the stone unturned, it brought 4 solid walls and the most steady, deadly routine. If you just keep drinking the pure water, and if you sleep the right number of hours, and if you take your vitamins once a day, then you'll be just fine. If you keep your room tidy, and if you listen to music softly, if you wear a necklace constantly, and keep Father, I can't distinguish me from this anymore. Father, it has taken my face on the front line, and I can't distinguish. Alone I am teacher, in her presence I am killer. Together we are murder, apart we become patience. Then you have all of those offers. They're still stood there as witnesses. Father, look close. Look, mother, look close. 'Cause the next time you'll see me, said the next time you'll see me, said brother and sister, look close. My son and my daughter, look close. 'Cause the next time you'll see me, said the next time you'll see me, the next time you'll see me, I'll be Remember Sammy Jankis? Do you remember Sammy Jankis? With all the madness of his rhyme, I'm forgetting why I am stood here. So let me be Vincent or the Elephant Man. Let me be Shelby, and then I'll be your lamb. And I'm forgetting why I'm stood here. My ignorance and selfishness forgot why I am stood here. But I'm back now, stood waiting for you behind a tree where you are stood on the other side waiting for me. And in 2 seconds' time, you'll start walking away. And in 2 seconds' time, I will have failed. 1, 2. Well, I guess this is where I tell you what I have learned. Beneath the olive groves at the age of 70, deep in the walls of my flat, I love you. And I have whispered it so softly, you're not sure what you have heard. And as I pick up my coat and head to the door, you're still confused of the crime. If you ever need me, I'll be back in a flash. But right now, I'm going out for a walk. And there may be some time. Cause the next time you'll see me, I said the next time you'll see me, I said brother and sister, look close. My son and my daughter, look close. Cause the next time you'll see me, I said the next time you'll see me, I said father. look close. I said, Father, look close. 'Cause the next time you'll see me, said the next time you'll see me, the next time you'll see me, I'll be a ghost.